Hello, welcome to the beaded poppy tutorial. If you purchased one of my kits, it should look something similar to this. Let's take a look. So you have your thread. This will be the outline of the poppy. And this light red will be the fill. And this will be the outer edging when it's all backed and ready to finish. And this will be the center of your poppy. And this is the pelon that you'll be beaded on. So it'll be something like that. And then you'll have some sort of vinyl, either red or white, depending on when you purchase the kit. And that will go on last after you're done beading. So then your thread is not showing. And you should have a pack of needles and a bar pin. Anyways, thank you. I hope you enjoy the tutorial. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always here to help. And thank you. This is my first tutorial, so let me know what you think. So first step is to get your needles threaded. The one that I use to pick up beads, I like to double. So there's a knot tying both strings together. And it just reinforces it. It makes your work a little more durable. And the second needle I use for tacking down. This one, if you're a little more advanced, you can use a thinner thread and then it won't separate your beads as much, but it's not necessary. I use size D thread for tacking down and stringing beads sometimes, but you'll just tie a knot in one end. So only one end tacks down the beads like that. So with your doubled needle to pick up beads, you'll want to come up through the very center of the poppy and pick up one single bead and just put it down in the same hole you came up with or right beside it so it stays nice and centered. And then you'll want to come up beside the bead. And when you do a circle, it usually takes about 7, sometimes 6, depending on the beads, but always double check before you tack down your bead thread. And on the circles, I like to tack down every bead or every second bead, depending on your own preference, but it gives it a nice shape when this base layer is every single bead because you can kind of control how they sit a little better. So just keep tacking down every single bead until you get to the end. And when you get to the end, make sure that your beads fit. It's always better to leave one less bead than one bead too many, or else, because if it's one bead too many, it'll look crowded and just less nice. So you'll want to put your doubled thread needle through the first bead that is on and put that needle down through where the thread line is, where the beads are tacked down. So for your third row, just keep repeating what you did on the first row. And if you want to add another one and make the center a little bigger, that's fine too. It's just personal preference. And you can also color your pattern so that between the beads don't show as much, but I didn't because I couldn't find my pencil crayons. So for the dark red outline, you want to use your dark red beads in your kit and string those. You come up right beside the center of the poppy on the outline. So get a good amount of beads. And when I'm doing an outline, the trick I find best to get a good straight line is to come up right on the line or as close to it as you possibly can. And then go down through the same hole or right beside it on the other side of the line. And just keep doing that. On the outline, it's a good idea to tack down every single bead or every other bead, so then they don't shift at all. I like to do 2 beads unless I'm on a corner or like a precision sort of area, because then it just gives your beads a tiny bit of wiggle room. If one doesn't quite fit and needs to move a tiny bit, then that's okay. It won't affect the overall look of your project. So just keep coming up right on the line, going back down through the line, and it should start to look like a poppy. And when you come up to the second corner, I'm gonna show you a trick I've learned with poppies and flowers in general, is you come right before that second line, like right before it, so that another row of beads will fit there. But we're gonna stop instead of going all the way down, and then that way your pattern will be the same throughout. Now you can always go all the way down on the first one, but this is just a trick that I've picked up. It's personal preference. If you want to do the first petal fully, then that's fine too. So keep going until all your outline is done. And this is a trick. How I tie my knots on the back of my work is you loop through where the thread is, and you go through the loop once, twice, and a third time, and this anchors the thread really, really well. Now at the end of the knot, you can either burn it or glue it. These knots, I find, if you just either leave it or tuck the thread in. So tuck it in like this before you cut it, and it usually holds just fine. I do usually glue my work because it just adds durability, but if you don't, then burning it might be a good idea. And sometimes this is a little troubleshooting. Even I make mistakes sometimes, so that's fine. So sometimes there'll be a knot on the back of your work, and the way I fix that so it doesn't stick out when you glue your stuff is I just like to take my needle a little bit away from it and pull it tight, but not enough to change the shape of your work. Just a little bit of tension is fine. So then the thread lays flat on the back of your piece. That's a good reminder to keep an eye on the back of your project too, because accidents do happen a little more often than I would like to admit. So that's okay. It's okay if it doesn't look perfect on the back. And once your outline is done, we'll do the little, I guess this would be like a shading to add depth. And in this tutorial, I used the dark red. But if you're feeling a little adventurous, you could also use the gold or extend the black, or you don't even have to add this part at all. It is up to you. Take some creative liberty here. And I find 4 beads is a good number for this particular pattern. And then you'll want to tack down every single bead in this one before you put your double threaded needle back through, because then the beads just sit a lot straighter if you do this before. And you'll want to put your thread needle back, or your bead, the thread that you're tacking, that you pick up beads with, put it right by the end of the first one. And now we are ready to start our fill. I hope you're all having fun so far. And for this first line, we're going to do every second bead until we get to the corner, and then every single bead because it just holds it in place so much better. So with your light red beads, you're going to do every second, and then when you come to this corner, just do every single bead in, and it'll help your work lay nice and flat. And you want to get those beads as far into the corner as you can. This is where actually coloring your pattern would be a good idea. I couldn't find my pencil crayons before I did this tutorial, so I didn't. And it's not necessary, but it just fills in the work a little better. You can always use a pen after, or just leave it. Imperfection is beauty, and this is your piece, your creativity, so it's personal preference. And so this first layer, we're going to go all the way. We're not going to stop like we did on the outline. And then because the corners get a little tight on the second row, I start from the center again. And gonna pick up some beads. So because the corners are a little tight here, we're just gonna do straight lines. We're not gonna go around the petal again. So get your beads ready. And every second bead again. This is just the number of beads I like to tack down when I'm doing fill. It just helps them sit a little flatter, but if you got a good number of beads and they're sitting perfectly, feel free to do more beads than that, 3 or 4 sometimes depending. But on small projects like this, it's good to get as many tacked down as you can. And you'll see how that last bead quite doesn't fit into the corner without making our work look cramped. So a good tip I like to do is when I'm sorting through my beads and I find a particular small one, I like to set it aside for moments like this. So you get your smallest bead and you put it in, and it should work good. And you come back down, and then you start up the other side. So do 2 rows on each side, and it just keeps it even. And you're gonna come back down. And you just keep doing this until it gets filled in. And this is just like how I like to bead my poppies. You could do it straight, you could do it all one way. You could keep going in the circle until it doesn't fit anymore, but this is just how I do mine. So you'll add one last little bead in there, and one petal is fully done. And now after you finish, I like to rip the paper off. This is another thing that's personal preference. You can leave it, you can do it after, but I just like to do this. So you rip pretty close to the side of the, and now you cut because you did your first edging on the right on the line, so you can probably get pretty close to the beads without cutting the thread. Oh, I should have slowed this down more. So this is what I do I like to mark a little spot where the bar pins go on in your backing. And then I like to cut it out. You could just put the bar pin on last if this is too much. And one side I like to just cut one little slit, and on the other side where the bar pin, there's one side that's a little smaller than the other, and I like to cut a teeny tiny hole because it just it sits a lot better on the back and you don't have part of the vinyl that's sticking up. But again, that's personal preference and it's not super important. This is just what I do. And again, gluing, personal preference, it's not necessary. But if you do have some glue, like E6000 glue, then just add a tiny little bit to the back and it just holds it in place a little better. And placement of the poppy, it can be straight, diagonal. I like to put mine a little uncentered just to give it that artistic flair. And we always sew these down just in case. So you go under the poppy bar and sew it right beside where the bar is so it doesn't shift if the glue ever comes loose. And just give this a couple tacks down and make sure on the beaded side that the thread doesn't come up on top of your beads. So you always want to make sure that you go through the beads. And if you don't have glue, make sure you sew it down. That's what those little holes in the bar pin are for, is for sewing it down a little more than I did here. I was a little pressed for time because my toddler did not want me to sit and do this anymore. So make sure you sew it down in each hole and about 4 times and it should hold. You can tell by yourself how sturdy it is while you're sewing it. And then do your anchor knot here again, like I showed previously. And give that a snip and either burn or just leave it. And so you want to undo your bar pin and put it through the side with the hole, and the clasp part is the skinnier side. So get it all put on like that. And you are ready to go. Again, glue, personal preference. I like to add just enough to hold it and glue my knots down. This is just what I like to do. It's completely unnecessary, especially with the bar pin holding your edge on. Just a little bit, and then you cut. You'll cut the vinyl backing so that you're ready to edge it, and cut it right along where the beadwork is so there's no edging sticking out. And for the edging, take your doubled thread, make sure it's long, and come up through the beadwork side and make sure your knot is far enough down that it doesn't hold. And then you're gonna get 2 gold beads and kind of just put it not directly beside, a little bit apart so both the beads have room to sit. And for this start, make sure they're loose. Do not pull these ones tight. And come up through that last bead and then get 1 bead and move a little bit over just so the bead has enough room to sit flat. And don't pull it too tight. You don't need to pull too tight until you do the bottom edge. And pick up 1 bead at a time and just repeat until you get to the end. And this is actually the base edging for 3-bead edging or anything. Most edgings, this is the base. They're a variation of this one. So just 1 bead at a time until you get to the end. And again, it's better to have 1 less than 1 too many beads. You come up through that last one and you'll kind of see the first bead is leaning. So you go the opposite way of that bead, go through, and this is where you'll have to leave it loose because once you do this last one, it'll pull it tight and come up so that your thread is on the front of the beaded part. And then you'll want to come a little bit down from where your edging is, just so you have room to tie that knot, and pull this all the way. And it's a good idea to just hold it if it's starting to tangle a little bit like this. This is what I do. I just hold it until it gets down, and then it won't knot up on you and it'll sit flat. And so you'll come between the backing and your beadwork. And this is a trick so that your knot stays hidden, and come down far so that the vinyl doesn't rip. So you'll do your anchor knot again, come through 3 times, and go slow, pull it slow, use your nail to go down, and then you'll go down again through the backing and the front and pull that out. This will just hide your knot. And you can always burn, if you want to burn your knot, you don't have to do this step. You can just burn it. And then I like to snip it as close to the edging as I can get. Congratulations, you made your poppy. You're all finished. I hope you had fun beading your poppy. If you would like to see my work, go follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll probably be posting more beading kits too. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more.